Okay, I'm recording for people that can't be here, you know. I need my glasses. My glasses. I need my glasses. Okay. Come on. I can reach that. I can reach. I got it. Okay. I plan on reading for a bit, but also I'm gonna try and stop at 11:30 just so I have enough time to talk to you before, because I know you did want to go to bed at like 12, but I'd still want to talk to you before then. Like give us like a good solid 30 minutes. Okay. The glasses are on, people. I have hot chocolate too. But it's very, very hot, so I can't drink it right now. I'll drink it later. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So where did I put my book? Oh, I put it right there. Wish there was like something to cover this up a little bit so it wouldn't be like in my face. The light's like too blinding. Hold on. I'm gonna try and see if I could do something. There we go. Let's see if this will work. Okay, I think that's good. Maybe a little more like that. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, something like that. Maybe a little dimmer. Be like that. No, I need a little bit more light to travel through. Okay. So we last left off at the the Luminous Boys. Yeah, the Luminous Boys. And they've just gotten to Nine Knaves Grotto. Alright, chapter 20. Hold on. There we go. Yeah. And also, sorry, I'm just going to see how much I want to try and read. Okay, I'm going to strive for I'm at 176 right now. I'm going to strive for to page 230. I don't know if I could do it, but we'll see. I will do what I can. Also, it started raining, so let me stop talking. Okay, maybe it's gonna pick up a little bit of rain, but it shouldn't be a lot. Ah, God, I love the rain. All right. Um. So yeah, chapter 20, Nynaeve's Grotto. A circle of sky gaped before them, full of zipping stars. May hurried past Pumpkin and burst into the open air. Phew! They were about halfway up one of the cliffs. Below and to the right was the Dead Sea. May breathed in the open air gratefully. When Pumpkin caught up, he did the same. It's down there, Lucius said, still pointing. May scanned all along the shore, which wasn't a shore anymore, but a collection of cliffs butting up against the water's edge. I don't see anything but water. Oh no, the rain is starting to pick up. The mic can kind of hear it. That's cool. All right. If you stare long enough, you will. It's there. He pointed, and that little curve in the rocks. Yeah, is it raining for you over there too? Ah, I see. It's kind of raining hard here, but like, not really. It's kind of dying down right now. But this morning it was like a lot. It was like actual like like actual rain, and it was like the droplets were really big, like super big. It was like wow. Yeah. Okay. Um. If you stare long enough, you will. It's there. He pointed. In that little curve in the rocks. It's hidden. May stared down at the curve he'd indicated. She stared for several seconds, so long that her eyes started to lose focus. And that's when she saw it. At the base of that curve, nestled in under the shadow of the rocks, was a tiny walled town built on a network of planks and bridges. It looked like the layers of a cake, with small square houses sitting almost on top of one another, reaching from the. It looked like layers of a cake with small square houses sitting almost on top of one another, reaching from the walkways and canals toward the cliffs. Its seaside hung. Its seaside side clung to the water, looking as if it might lean forward to peer into the waves and fall in. The wall itself was surrounded by a boardwalk and interrupted only by a tall open gate, but it all blended so well with the shapes that of its surroundings that when May looked away, then looked back, it took her a second to pick it out again. Gosh, it's practically invisible. That's the way they like it, Lucius said. Few spirits even know it's here. Knaves are like that. They're a secretive bunch. May nodded. They must be. To live in such a dangerous spot, just inches above the deadly water of the Dead Sea. I'm sad to see you go, Lucius said gravely, interrupting her train of thought. His long, handsome eyelashes fluttered at May. You're not coming any farther? She searched the cliff edge. But how will we get down? There, Lucia said, matter-of-factly, pointing to a tiny indent in the rock, which May could now see was a path. She walked over to its edge. It was just enough room for one person to stand on. As she hugged her stomach against the rock. Really? Is this is the only way? Lucius nodded. He stuck out his hand and May took it reluctantly. There's a girl. There's a girl. It was nice to meet you. Good luck, Maybird. He started to turn away. May and Pumpkin looked at each other. Poor lonely soul, May thought. Pumpkin's eyes said he felt sorry for Lucius too. Wait! She threw out her hand to touch him, but he turned around first. May bit her lip. Why won't you come with us? Just to the grotto. Just to get out of the caves for a little while. Lucius looked back at the cave, then at her. Oh no, I can't. Really, he might see me. But you can turn around whenever you want. It's not very far. If you could just take us to the edge of the town, please. May didn't want to put Lucius in danger, but she also didn't want him to spend the rest of eternity hiding in a cave. Lucius looked bashful. You mean you'd like for me to come? May smiled sincerely. Very much. Lucius gazed down at the grotto. I suppose I can venture down to the water with you. Maybe I'll even take you to the gates, he said proudly. With Lucius leading the way, May and Pumpkin grinned at one another. Pumpkin insisted on being in the middle Pumpkin insisted on being in the middle as they made their way down the cliff, zigzagging back and forth along the face of the rock. Several times May lost sight of the town below and thought for a minute that there must be some other path and that they were going the wrong way. But finally it came into view again, and a few minutes later they reached a small platform of rock that marked the end of the trail. A finger of the sea stretched out between the platform where May and the others stood and the wall of the grotto. Dotting the black, oily water that separated them from the grotto were many large, smooth rocks lined up in staggered rows. I guess those are stepping stones? I'm not going out there, Pumpkin said. No, I'll stay here and wait for you. Oh, it'll be easy. Lucius zipped right up to the side of the platform, his feet poking just over the edge. Then he floated onto the first rock. See? May and Pumpkin stared at the seawater. It lapped at its sides of the stone eagerly. What if it's booby-trapped or something? May asked. Oh, don't be scaredies. Come on. The next stone over was very close to the first. Lucius floated onto that one quickly, his arms out for balance, then looked over his shoulder. Well, I guess. May stepped onto the first one, then waited to step onto the other one, and then waited to step onto the second until Lucius left it for the third. He skimmed across the stones ahead of her, finally floating triumphantly. Hold on. Just gotta do something real quick. My lips are chapped. Okay. All right. He skimmed across the stones ahead of her, finally floating triumphantly onto the wooden boardwalk edged the wall of that edged the wall that edged the wall of the grotto. May followed, taking Lucius's May followed, taking Lucius's icy hand as he offered it to help her onto the planks. That was easy, May said breathlessly, flushed with pleasure. Lucius beamed. He let go of her hand and floated along the wall. Meanwhile, May gestured at Pumpkin, who still hovered on the opposite side of the water, shaking his head. Pumpkin, really, it's fine. Pumpkin darted a look at the water, then one at May. He groaned, and he began to scurry across. By the time he floated off to the last stone, Lucius had drifted back to them. His big, worried eyes filled May with alarm. What's wrong? Come look. Pumpkin, May, and Lucius approached the gate. The main walk that ran through the grotto was completely empty. Along each side of it, the square houses that sat atop one the other like layers of cake lay in various stages of disrepair. Doors hanging off hinges, windows covered in spider webs, old pieces of furniture lying forlorn and alone on balconies. Overhead, clotheslines holding curious sacks of liquid dangled up and down the walkways, and above their heads, the same sacks hung from the top of the gate. Now that May thought about it, it was strange that it should be standing wide open, and and that had been and that it had been so easy to get this close. She took in the scene before her, letting it sink in. Letting it sink in. There wasn't a soul to be seen anywhere. The town was deserted. The companions entered the gate cautiously, peering this way and that for any sign of movement. May's feet thudded hollowly along the boardwalk. Through the slats of the walkway, she could see the sinister blackness of the sea water, waving back and forth beneath them. Oh, Pumpkin groaned, drifting slightly behind the other two and peering this way and that fretfully. He looked like he might turn and head for the hills at any moment. I think I'll wait outside. It's fine, Pumpkin. Everyone's gone, Lucius chirped. But May wasn't so sure that meant everything was fine. If John the Gibber is gone, they've come a long way for nothing. Um, they crisscrossed the grotto 3 times, weaving up and down different bridges and alleyways. Among the houses were several other buildings. May read the signs NKG School of Thievery and Pickpocketing, with a banner beneath that said, Enroll now for spring. Al Capone's Academy for the Musically Gifted has Have a Nice Knife, which displayed all sorts of old daggers and swords in its window. The Repentant Thieves Center for Charity. Each time they reached the wall that surrounded the town, they turned and tried a different route. Everywhere the walkway was deserted. May stood and rested her back against the wall, thinking. What had happened to all the residents of the grotto? Had they fallen into the water? That wasn't likely. Had something even worse happened? Then May thought about the ghouls back in the catacombs. Had something come for the residents of the grotto? May peered at the space in front of her feet. The walk shook just slightly, as if someone nearby was walking on it. May looked up. The Repentant Thieves Center for Charity stood just opposite her. May stood up to. May walked up to the door, a tingle beginning at the base of her neck. She peered at the glowing picture of a beautiful child with huge brown eyes blinking at her. This poor, wretched orphan needs your help, she read from the poster. Oh, I don't know, she muttered, backing away, ignoring the tingle. What's that, May? Lucius asked earnestly. Nothing, I just. May turned back to look at the sign again. Ghosts can't change, she muttered to herself. She stepped forward, put her hand on the door handle, and pulled. Instead of opening onto the inside of a building, the door opened onto another walkway. Just that it. Sorry about that. Let me see if my. Yeah, it should be good to drink now. Oh, my hot chocolate is good. Then go make yourself some. Okay, I will. Oh, yeah. After. Nice. Okay, back to the reading. Okay. She, Instead of opening onto the inside of a building, the door opened onto another walkway, just that one that was much cleaner and newer and also filled with little houses. Pumpkin and Lucius had come up behind her, and they all peered inside, and they all peered in. May led them forward. Good job, May, Lucius said, patting her back. After a few sharp corners, they came to an open space. Here the boardwalk formed an octagon, dotted in the center by a great fountain. In it was a in it was a statue of a man in a green hat, green tunic, and tights. Uh, uh, where was I? Sorry, my got distracted. My brother's home now. Where was I? Okay. And it was a statue of a man in a green hat, a green tunic, and tights. May smiled. That's Robin Hood. On his back, he held a quiver of arrows, and out of the tip of each arrow arched a black stream of sea water. Just beyond the fountain was a large building with a sign dangling crookedly from the sloped roof. In glowing letters, it read, Hangman's Noose Town Hall. They stepped in through the doors and were immediately overpowered by the smell that was both stale and sour. Ugh! They all put their hands up to their noses at the same moment. May took in the scene. Big stone rafters crisscrossed the roof, and from them hung more giant sacks of liquid. Um, a bar ran along one side, with hundreds of gleaming silver chalices hanging from tiny looped hooks above it. There must have been at least 100 tables scattered across the floor in various states of disarray, with chairs sitting straight up or lying on their sides, or broken and smashed on the floor. Graffiti had been carved into the walls. May read some of the phrases. Always be prepared to lie. Always watch for seawater. Keep your friends close, but your enemies at and your enemies at knife point. Then a fourth one caught May's eye. John the Gibber is a fibber. May put her finger on the words for others to look. At least we know John the Gibber was here. Below it, there was a tiny jagged carving of a tree, with eyes peering through the leaves. May gasped. Then a movement to her right distracted her. Pumpkin, what are you doing? Pumpkin held a gleaming silver knife in one hand and was carving something into the wall, biting his lip in concentration. Oh God, my brother is spoiling fucking Star Wars to my parents like he always does. Pumpkin rules. Yeah, that's definitely what he's gonna say. Pumpkin! May reached and took the knife from him. Where did you get this? May looked to see what he had written. Pumpkin was he. It was just lying here on the table. Look how shiny it is. May put the knife back down on the table and scowled at him. Apparently, he decided the grotto was safe because he merely grinned back at her, holding his nose. But May had a bad feeling in the pit of her stomach. Lucius was peering around the room. I haven't seen anything like I haven't seen anything like civilization in years, he said, his eyes wide. Don't you think he might be hiding here? Do you? May shook her head, ignoring the bad feeling. Don't worry, Lucius. She turned and squinted at the carving of the tree again. Hold on. Okay. There we go. I'm trying to find like the right volume so it doesn't catch my brother, but it's still loud enough so it can hear me. I think I found the right. Okay, I think I've got the right thing now. I just don't want a lot of because it was detecting my brother and my mom. So hopefully that has helped. All right, hold on. I need another swig of my hot chocolate. Sorry, I just gotta wait. Sorry, guys. Okay, I think I can keep on going now. Where did I go? You'll never believe what happens next. Okay. Okay, there we go. Um, she shook her head, ignoring the bad feeling. Don't worry. Don't worry, Lucius. She turned and squinted at the carving of the tree again, and then stared at the shelves along the nearest wall, which held various sacks of scrolls. May walked over to them and pulled one out. Carefully, she unrolled it. Look, she called back over her shoulder to the other two. She took several papers. She took several paper. Sorry about that. She took several papers from the different piles. The lower realm at a glance. A criminal's guide to the Southern Territories. Top 100 destinations for looting and pillaging. What to expect when you're expecting to be executed. Lucius remains on the other side of the room, by the door. Hovering unsurely and staring out around. Pumpkin came and looked with her, still holding his nose. Sorry, I just gotta wait till everyone's in their fucking room. So I don't want them coming in my room. Okay, there we go. She took several. Um, she took several papers from the different piles. The lower realm at a glance. A criminal's guide to the Southern Territories. Top 100 destinations for looting and pillaging. What to expect when you're expecting to be executed. Lucius remained on the other side of the room, by the door, hovering unsurely and staring around. Pumpkin came and looked with her, holding his nose. Beside the shelves of brochures was a huge book. May scooted over to it and read the cover. Hues in Nine Naves Grotto and maps to where they live. May ripped the cover of with her hands. Look at this. Finally, Pumpkin drifted over. Oh, nifty. He grabbed the cover and pulled it open. Suddenly, windows started slamming shut, and then the two double doors. Lucius, standing by a window, cast about quickly with his eyes. It's the bogey! With a lightning zip, with a lightning fast zip, he careened across the tavern toward the last open door. But just as he did, one of the sacks of liquid fell from above and landed on his head, burst open, and splashed him with black water. His face contorted into one horrified look, and then he vanished. Lucius! May screamed. She leaped toward him, but Lucius had gone. Only a round of puddle of seawater lay on the ground where he'd been hovering. No! At the same time, May felt breathing on her neck. She gaped and leaped. She turned and leaped back to see she was face to face with a man hanging from the rafters by his knees, his hands hanging down below him, one of them holding a water gun filled with black liquid. May tried to run, but he pushed her up against the wall with one frigid hand, holding the water gun to her throat. He smiled a wicked, sickly grin at her. Welcome to the grotto. I hear you're looking for me. I'm sorry, I'm not going to do pretty good pirate voice, but I will try. But yeah, that's the end of that chapter. Holy shit, this is a long one. The Black Sea water, that's what's in the water of the Dead Sea. That's what's in the water gun. No, it works in mysterious ways, man. It works in mysterious ways. It's kind of fucked up, but also cool at the same time. You should do that for like a D&D thing. You know, when we, you know. Yeah, I think that'd be a cool idea. Yeah, probably for the Friday group. Alright. Alright, chapter 21. John the Gibber. Pumpkin let out a startled scream and shot for the door. The man laughed. I'd freeze if ye are where ye are, or you. Sorry, I'm not good at it. I'd freeze where I'd freeze where ye are, or you'll end up just like your friend. Pumpkin, hovering quaking, slowly turned. Get back where I can get a look at ye. Pumpkin complied, sidling up behind May. In a vaporous swirl, the man oozed down from the rafters and came to an upright hover an inch off the floor. He was a gruesome sight. Underneath his filthy clothes, which were ripped and covered in mold. His body was gaunt. His hollow cheeks stuck themselves underneath his cheekbones so that he looked like he was trying to make a fish face. Cockroaches crawled out from beneath his collar and into his hair and scraggly beard. A live one! Look at you! The man laughed heartily again and lowered his water gun. He wore he wore a smile, but his eyes glinted like steel. A cockroach ran up along his body and lip. I haven't seen one of your kind in years. I couldn't believe it when they said you'd come through the gate. What a sight! I'm John. He thrust out his hand. Ye can call me Mr. Gibber. May stared at his hand. Where's Lucius? She asked, too stunned to speak above a whisper, her eyes glued to the spot where Lucius had vanished. Long John Silver? Yes, exactly, Long John Silver. Um, John eyed her sympathetically. I'd say he's about 1,000 miles south of us right now, dearie. No! May threw her hands up over her mouth. Tears welled along the ridges of her eyes. She felt a cold pricking on her chin. John the Gibber had tucked an index finger there and was lifting her face to look at him. Chin up, lass. Don't waste your time feeling sorry for what's already past. Nothing you or I can do. May shrank back, not just from his words, which sounded mean and hard, but from the unbearable smell. Just when she'd gotten used to the smell of the town hall, he'd appeared with a stench 3 times as bad. He smelled like maggots and slime and mold and old socks and all the bad things May could think of. As she moved backward, she bumped into Pumpkin. He was cowering behind her. She felt stuck between them like ham in a sandwich. She turned back to John and wiped at her tears. No, sweat and swiped at her tears. You're John the Gibber? Don't like the looks of me, eh? Well, I don't blame you. But it isn't my fault. What happened to your friend? Everybody knows not to use the west door of the tavern, except intruders. May was speechless. John seemed to take this as agreement, but he once again burst into a wide grin. Hey, mates, he called back over his shoulder. Come on out. We've got ourselves a live one in the grotto. An explosion of voices filled the hall. We're not your mates, John the Gibber, one voice called. It seemed like it was almost just beneath May's feet. Oh, sorry. Fucking my shoulder is like pretty itchy. I don't know why. It seemed like it was almost just beneath May's feet. You wish, Gibber, said another. Slowly, specters began arriving from all directions, oozing up through the cracks in the floor, pouring into the front door of the hall. The women were as rough looking as the men. Many of them were covered in scars and tattoos. Several were missing fingers. One was missing a head. As May watched in awe, they watched her in return, crowding around her and Pumpkin, but only staring at her. Some grabbed drinks from the bar before they joined the others. Can I touch her? One woman with 3 teeth and a rope mark around her neck asked, leaning forward and sticking an index finger against May's arm. They all seemed to think this was a good idea and followed suit. May shrank back, horrified. It sure is an honor meeting you, one man said. Can I have your autograph? May just stared at him, her eyes blurred with tears. He ran in and got a quill pen from behind the bar and shoved one of the brochures toward May. Make it out to guillotined Gwyneth. That's me girlfriend. May did so, stiffly, the ink coming out of the quill pen with the green glow. Immediately, everybody in the room crowded around her, waving brochures. Spirits who looked like pirates, spirits wearing white and black and white striped prison suits, spirits in cowboy hats. Behind her, Pumpkin whimpered. John hovered backward a few steps and waited. Soon the crowds drifted back to their tables and began talking and laughing and drinking, but they continued to cast looks her way. John pulled a long bench away from one of the tables, then came and wrapped an arm around May's neck and pulled her forward. Now have a seat and you can tell me what brings you to John the Gibber. May sat down on the bench awkwardly, sniffing. Pumpkin drifted down beside her, nibbling his fingers. John stared at her for some time. When she said nothing, he finally leaned toward her, conspiratorially. So, what brings you here? What brings you? May could feel everyone's eye on her. She swallowed and sniffed. She didn't know what to do. She looked at Pumpkin, who sat gazing at all the faces, with his teeth chattering. No help at all. The Gibber whipped a dirty, rotten hanky out of his coat and handed it to her. Oh, now enough of that. Now enough of that sniffling. If you're worried about us sounding the bogey alarm, don't worry. Those in the grotto don't bow to the bogey or Bo Cleeville. You're safe from here, missy. Evil Cleeville's a pain in our side, and we sure would help him for nothing. Made things tough for us, he has. He'd as soon throw us all knaves in the sea as he would look. He'd as soon throw all of us knaves in the sea as he would look at us. And we feel the same about him. And we won't even punish your friend here for trying to make. And we won't even punish your friend here for trying to take yonder knife. He eyed Pumpkin, then turned back to May. Now, come on out with it. May, grief-stricken, May took the hanky, pinching it gingerly and eyeing it with disgust. May swiped at her nose. The Undertaker said you'd help us. A roar of laughter burst behind her. The whole hall went into an uproar. Help from the Gibber, that's a good one. That's a good one, one woman shouted. He'll help you all right. Right into the gallows, another man added. When May looked back at John, he was just grinning at her. She nibbled on a nail. What do they mean? She asked, wiping her eyes with trembling fingers. John smiled confidently. They're just jealous of me. On account of me being the williest knave in the grotto. They like to make fun, but don't pay 'em and don't. Ugh. They like to make fun, but pay 'em no mind. He winked, flashing another horrid smile. What do you drink? Drink? I don't know. Her throat was very dry. Do you have orange juice? Well, let's see. John hovered out of his seat and toward the bar. No orange juice. But we have, that's the spirits. Spirit of St. Louis spirits. Let the spirit move you spirits. Will spirits make me drunk? The whole bar went into hysterics. May blushed. I'll have something, Pumpkin piped in, his teeth ceasing to chatter. He made he met May's stern gaze with an innocent shrug. I wasn't offering ye any, John replied hoarsely. Do you have anything that's not spirits? May asked, elbowing Pumpkin in the arm. As John thought for a moment, a stream of black water went zipping through the air past his head. He ducked just in time to miss getting hit in the cheek. Behind May, Pumpkin wheezed and ducked against her back. John held up his water gun, pointing in the direction of the water that the water had come from. The shooter was a roly-poly man wearing an eye patch and a t-shirt that said, I'd rather be in Belmorte. He was guffawing, holding his belly as he laughed. Can't close that chime, Jib. Splash. Something like a bright turquoise egg splattered against his head, sending out a splash of black liquid. His face contorted into an expression of terror, and then he vanished. The whole room went silent, and then broke out into laughter. Old Lefty finally got wet, somebody cried. The goal's got him now. What lay on the floor where Lefty had sat were the rubbery remnants of the water balloon. I think I'm going to faint, Pumpkin gasped beside her. May wanted to ask if someone had just hit Lefty on purpose with seawater, but just then, John sidled up to them at the table. Things are going to get rowdy in a minute. We'd better get moving. It's your turn next, Pot-Belly Petey, somebody yelled. As she said those words, the woman with the rope burn from earlier pulled a water gun out from under her ample bosom and fired at the man who'd just spoken. His eyes widened right before the water hit, then he disappeared. With that, the hall erupted. Big balloons filled with seawater went flying in all directions. Water guns came from pockets and bosoms. It was a Dead Sea free-for-all. This is no place for a kiddie, John the Gibber said, keeping his gun cocked and looking around pertly. Come on. He expertly led them out from underneath the torrent of water. He expertly led them out from underneath the torrent of water balloons flying overhead. One came so close to May's head, she felt it whizzing past her ear. It hit a baby-faced man in a cowboy hat, and he disappeared. Hey, who killed Billy the Kid? Sure that he didn't deserve it. As a fresh volley of balloons flew over their heads, May, John, and Pumpkin burst through the doors onto the town octagon. May had a chance to look back one last time to the puddle of water by the west door, and then the doors swung closed. Two men had already come out ahead of them, and one was trying to push the other into the fountain. This way, John said, leading them across the octagon and into the alley. May's feet clomping as they rushed along. Pumpkin kept a tight grip to the back of her bathing suit. Mr. Gibber, why are they doing that to each other? Just for fun, lass. They'll quit soon. But isn't going to the South Place a terrible thing? Oh, aye. A fate worse than death. He took a left, then a right, then another left. So you need my help. He threw back over his shoulder briefly. What is it you're aiming to do? Off somebody? Robbery? I need to get in to see the Book of the Dead. John froze in his tracks. Oh, hold on. I want some more hot chocolate. Oh, some good hot chocolate. Okay. John froze in his tracks. He turned her, crouched down to May's eye level, and wiped a cockroach off his cheek. There was a steely glint in his eye. That's a good joke, lass. Who told you to say that to me? I need to get home, back to Bury Swamp, to my mom and my cat. The Undertaker said my only chance is the book. John pricked up straight and yanked on his beard a few times, his eyes still locked on May's. The Book of the Dead. John looked at her for a few minutes. Then the glint disappeared from his eye and he began businesslike. It's a big job. Most would say impossible. The Eternal Edifice, it's a fearsome place. I don't know anyone who's gone in and come back out, except myself, that is. Beside May, Pumpkin trembled. You've seen the book? John frowned. Yes, I've seen the book. Had it right at me hands, I did. What did you go to find out? Why, the only thing worth knowing, really, where the greatest treasures are hidden. There are a few in the realm. I've been looking for the treasures of Queen Sheba for the past 100 years. Where did it say it was? John smiled grimly. It didn't. The book didn't open for me. Blasted stupid book. Anyway, the edifice is guarded heavily. Ghouls, goblins, you name it. All working for Bo Clevo. They took over the edifice a few years ago and haven't budged since. What makes you think your britches are big enough for it? May shrugged. She thought of telling John about her letter just to prove somebody thought her britches were big, but then she thought better of it. Well, John looked at May and stroked his beard, then waggled one of his black teeth and pulled it out. Nobody can ever say John the Gibber was a yellow belly. Hold on. We're the bitches with the britches. Oh man. The rain is coming down hard right now. It's fucking awesome. Alright. Well, well, John looked at me and stroked his beard and then waggled one of his black teeth and pulled it out. Nobody can ever say John the Gibber was a yellow belly. Things have been dull around here anyhow. I'll do it. Thank you, May breathed. Now, how do you propose to pay me? May's stomach lurched. Pay you? John chuckled, but this time his laugh was as cold as crushed ice. You don't think I'd do this kind of thing for my health? Wait, let me say that again. You don't think I do this kind of thing for my health? The city is a dangerous place, probably the most dangerous in the realm, except that I hear Bo Cleaville's building something fearful in the northeast. We'll all be risking our teeth. I don't risk mine for free. But May's lip trembled. I don't have anything. Jules? May shook her head. Bilocation tokens? Fast forward motion potion? Elixirs of any sort? I wouldn't mind being a bit fatter. Or seeing the future. I have 2 teleport tokens. Please. John seemed to rack his brain. Have you by any chance got an extra head? I might be able to sell it to one of the fellows here. May just stared now, silently. Then it hit her. Oh, I have some soul cakes and Pumpkin has a starlight. John rolled his eyes, then looked at Pumpkin up and down. I'll take your house ghost. Oh, Pumpkin moaned. You can't, May gasped, horrified. Listen, lass, if you want to see the book, you'll have to pay up. John smiled, friendly. A trip into the city is bad enough, but a trip into the eternal edifice, shoo! John ran a hand along his forehead. I don't know. It would be the biggest trick of my life, getting us all in there and getting us all out. Maybe I could pay you once I get back home to Burry Swamp? Huh. Ha! So long, lassie. John turned and started walking away. Wait! John kept walking. May felt a cold arm around her shoulders and turned to look at Pumpkin. Well, I guess it means it's back to Belmorte, he said, trying to sound breezy. May slumped against Pumpkin's arms. They had already lost Lucius. This fact was so terrible she almost couldn't believe it. Maybe Pumpkin was right. She tried to picture never seeing home or Somber Kitty again. Just up ahead of them, John vanished around a corner. May pulled out her sack off her back. Wait! I have something else! A moment passed and then John's head appeared around the corner. May dug into her bag and pulled out her comfort blanket. I have this. Sorry, I'm gonna just adjust myself. Oh, God. I have this. May held her blanket out. Actually, sorry, I'm gonna adjust something too. Something else. Okay. I have this. May held her blanket out. It's from North Farm. John eyed them both suspiciously, drifting back toward them, then eyed the blanket. No, it ain't. Look at the label. John read it. A comfort blanket. He jabbed at it with his finger. How'd you get this? May swallowed. She hadn't thought she'd ask. It's none of your business, Pumpkin said, surprising both of them. John turned a look of irritation on him. But it's yours if you take me to see the book, May said quickly. Pumpkin looked at her impressed. John ran his hands along the fabric of the blanket, his eyes gleaming again. It's rare. I could get a good price for it. May waited. Ye wouldn't be hiding anything important from John the Dripper, would ye, lass? I don't want to get mixed up with no northern spirit business. As he as he said this, his eyes belied his greed. They were glued to the blanket. May swallowed, then shook her head furiously. I'll tell you what, lassie. You give me this blanket, and you promise me something. When we get to the book, and if it lets you read it, you look up where the treasure of the Queen of Sheba is for me. Hold on, I need to put on more chapstick. May bit her lip, and she looked at Pumpkin, who shook his head no. May set her jaw. I promise, she said, holding out her pinky. John looked at it, not knowing what she meant, so she hooked it through his pinky and gave it a quick shake. John smiled. We'll go and pack them. They headed back through the streets, which were now lit every few feet with glowing blue lamps and glass bulbs. The walkways were still mostly empty, except for a few specters weaving drunkenly, some arm in arm. Soon they came to a skinny doorway on street level. John pulled out a key. Through here, he said. Through here, he said, opening it. They climbed several tiny stone steps that seemed to lead right into the ceiling. But here, John pulled out another key and stuck it into a tiny hole to the right and pushed the ceiling over to reveal another stairway leading straight up. At the top of this one, there was a landing with a metal chest resting on it. John opened it and stepped in. Then as May and Pumpkin watched, he disappeared. May and Pumpkin peered in and found another stairway leading down. They climbed into the chest and followed. At the bottom of the stairs, John was waiting for them on the square platform, right on top of the water, just inches from the deadly water of the sea. The platform itself was piled with treasures, jewels, gold, gigantic diamonds, several crowns, and nestled in the middle, a sleeping bag and a pillow. John grinned with pride. Nice, eh? The treasure is mostly from Arabia. Ali Baba nicked it from the 40 thieves, but I nicked it from him while he was in his kitchen eating baba ganoush. You sleep here? This is my real home. This is my real... my... What is with this accent? This accent? Jesus. Hold on. This is my real... This is me real home. Sorry, I'm getting so like caught up with this whatever weird accent I'm having. Okay. This is my real home. Why am I seeing that like so weird? This is my real home. Any knave worth his salt has a house for show, and a hidden one where he lives and sleeps. Keeps me from getting sent to South Place in the middle of the night. But if everybody murders one another here, how are there still enough people to fill the town? Ah, knaves are a dime a dozen. There's always new ones coming in. Did you see this golden apple? John held up the shiny fruit. Can I have it? Pumpkin said. May and John both turned to see he was wearing a tiara, a veil, and holding out his hand for the apple. Give me that! John shouted, swiping the tiara and the veil from Pumpkin's head and putting it all back in his pile. He dug some more. What do you do with all this stuff? May asked. John looked confused. Well, I have it. Oh. Ah, here it is. You won't find any of these in the realm anywhere anymore. It was a long robe with a hood. John swirled it around May's shoulders. It looks great on you. See? May surveyed herself and gasped. Her skin had become transparent. Death Shroud. It's only a lender, mind you, and don't get it into your head that you might keep it. There's a few floating around, with almost all the live ones being gone and executed by now. May swallowed, and John looked at her apologetically. Sorry. Anyhow, they've been outlawed, of course, so it's a real nice collector's item. He would have thought there'd be a live one around to use it, he said with pride. Wow, May breathed. It'll get you... Sorry. It'll get you into ether, undetected. Of course, if anybody looks closely, they'll be able to tell you're alive. You looking so healthy and still using your feet to get around, but most spirits take a while to learn to float anyway, and most spirits don't pay much attention to anything but themselves. The sniffing phantoms are a different story enough. The sniffing phantoms are a different story though. Frightful, careful they are about who they let into the city, and it's a frightful penalty for trying to trick them. We'll get you nice and fragrant before we go in, don't worry. John indicated the stairs and they all went back up. When he had closed the treasure chest, they walked outside. John, Mr. Gibber, what do you know about evil Bo Cleeville? John's face descended into a deep frown. To cover it, he scratched an ear, pinched at it, and pulled a centipede off. Back when I was newly deceased, me and my pals were down in Nine Knaves Grotto, had a run of the realm. We lived high on the hog in the city then, gambling all night, drinking all day, robbing whatever we could, and the pickings were easy. Plenty of trips into the desert, plenty down south to the pretty seaside towns. Stole everything we could get our hands on. John smiled, his 3 teeth glinting in the light of the fire. Good times they were. We saw a live one like you from time to time, Missy, and I was pals with a couple of them. We heard stories of stirrings in the northern parts, stories of spirits going up there and never coming back. We didn't believe them. But then I saw the bogey. They were out riding horses. We were out riding horses. That was before all the animals got gathered up. Me and my mate, Cyril, a live one, by the way. See this little storm moving across the sand? And then we see the dogs. Poor Cyril. He loved dogs, so he started riding toward them. And then they got closer, and I could see, and I think Cyril saw too, that those dogs meant business, and that there was somebody with them. John paused. Well, knaves are no fools, and we kicked our horses into high gallop, but it was too late. Poor Cyril tripped up his mare, and last I saw him, he was lying there on the sand. And then the bogey was upon him, and then. And then? Pumpkin pressed. Yeah, you don't want to pet those doggos. Those doggos are bad. Ah, fuck. Okay. Back to the scheduled programming.
Do you know how to turn off the stove light?
Sorry, just. Okay, back to where I was going. Um. And then Pumpkin pressed, his eyes huge. John was staring into the distance as if he didn't see either of them anymore. The bogeyman has these horrible fingers and little saucers at the end. He put the fingers on Cyril, and then Cyril sucked up into them, an inch at a time, sucked into nothingness. He shook his head. And we thought South Place was the worst that could happen to us. May and Pumpkin were quiet. Anyhow, maybe I noticed it more after that, but everything started changing. All the animals started disappearing. We could see how it was going. Spirits were going out on raids and they weren't coming back. The city started crawling with creatures from South Place, though how they got up here is anyone's guess. So we built the grotto, and all is well again. A little more dangerous when we go out on raids. Don't get to go on them as much, but still, we are protected. You're not scared of the bogey? You're not scared the bogey may find you here? As long as I'm in the grotto, I don't fear the bogey. Once we leave, I'll fear him greatly, I will. We won't run into him, though, trust me. How do you know? Because I plan on keeping my spirit. John's eyes grew dark and glinty, and his jaw stiffened. The look of mirth disappeared from his face. And if we did run into him to keep our spirits, well, lass, it would take a miracle. Talk had begun to Talk had begun to rise on the south of a living cat with high pointy ears and no fur. Most did not believe it. In Sour Sands, 2 miles south of the majestic Weeping River, and 3,750 miles west of Nine Naves Grotto, he was spotted by a tribe of nomads drinking from a tributary. His eyes immediately began to tear, a side effect of the water that the nomads had long ago gotten used to. When this happened, Sambarkiti's expression changed from a frown of sorrow to one of irritated confusion before running off. At the section of the Northern Pass Road and South Bend, he was spotted by an enterprising young goblin who was waiting at the crossroads, selling guitar lessons in exchange for everlasting souls, his favorite brand of shoe. The goblin, he was never one to let a potential customer, however banished or unlikely to actually own a pair of shoes, pass him by, spoke to Sambarkiti, assuring him that, indeed, one need not have opposable thumbs to master a musical instrument. Sambarkiti eyed him coolly and darted away. He had no idea if he was getting closer to May or farther away. Now he looked down the three possible paths that led away from the crossroads and waited for what his gut might say, but nothing came. Finally, after much deliberation and sniffing, and a small sigh, he turned right onto South Bend, toward a strange grouping of triangular buildings in the sand. A new scent drifted to him on the breeze, making his skinny stomach growl. Moving toward him were a trio of almond-skinned people with long, black glossy hair and elaborated painted eyelids. They wore white linen sheets and held a heaping bough of fava beans low to the ground as they called to him softly. Sambarkiti hadn't seen food, much less eaten since any. Let me say that again. Sambarkiti hadn't seen food, much less eaten any, since he'd arrived, and ever after. Being a cat and not prone to guess at the cruelties of men, even dead ones, he ran forward. A net appeared from behind one of the figures' backs, and suddenly Sambarkiti was scooped into the air, letting out a long howl. With exclamations of excitement, the Egyptians said they would call him Dina Akbar, which meant big ears. But Sambarkiti did not speak Egyptian, so he was not insulted. He only spoke cat, and in a soft, plaintive voice, he spoke it out. He spoke it now. Meow, mew, meow, and then he was carried away. And that was the end of that chapter. Oh man, my thing is still pretty itchy. Okay. Feel like I might want this to be my last, because, yeah. Last chapter. It's 2:15. It's gonna be at 2:13, which is pretty good. But I don't want to keep on going because I want to try and talk to you longer before you go to sleep. Alright, so chapter 22, The Outskirts. Alright, let me just adjust myself again, because I need to do that, because I'm tired. Oh, that hurt. I'm getting old in my old age of early 20s. Okay. Ooh, what's gonna happen next? I wonder, man. I wonder what's gonna happen next. I don't know what's gonna happen next. Okay. Yeah, chapter 22. Onto the outskirts. The whole town of My Name's Grotto came out to see. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what happens in the book. I'm reading this for the first time ever. Don't call me a liar. I'm not a liar. You're a liar. Alright. Chapter 22. Into the outskirts. The whole town of Naves Grotto came out to see the three travelers off. Guillotine Gwyneth took hold of May's hand and shook it heartily, holding her other hand to her head to keep it in place. You're a nice little girl. If you don't perish in the edifice, which you surely will, please remember dear old Gwyneth to the good old earth, will ye? She patted May's hip affectionately. Good luck, someone else shouted from the back of the crowd. You'll need it with the gibber leading you. May, May, May climbed down off the edge of the boardwalk onto the rowboat that was docked there, following John the Gibber, who sat in the middle bench in front of the oars. The back of the rowboat bore a painted message. Property of Tunnel of Horror, Pit of Despair Amusement Park. Pumpkin hovered over on the edge of the dock, looking unsure. What if the boat sinks or we get splashed? We don't have a choice. Come on, Pumpkin. We don't have a choice. Come on, Pumpkin, May urged. Hurry up or we'll leave ye behind, John added. May reached out her hand and Pumpkin took it, making a face at John, then turning to May. I don't see why he gets to be the boss. John had a pair of rubber gloves in his hand. He blew into one and then the other. Why'd you do that? May asked. Huh? What'd you say? You're so quiet I can hardly hear ye. May repeated herself, this time more loudly. The gloves are protecting you from the water that might be on the oars. But tricky knaves are always putting holes in them, so tiny you can't see 'em. He watched the glove in his hands to see if it would deflate. Looks like I got a good pair this time, he added for a minute. I don't suppose your skinny-armed friend would be any good at rowing. Pumpkin crossed his arms around his knees, which he pulled up in front of his face, and looked at May. Will you tell him that I'm an excellent rower, but I just don't feel like it right now. May put her thumbs to her temples. It was going to be a long ride. Once he had the gloves on, after a lot of mumbling about Pumpkin under his breath, John leaned into the oars. Pumpkin and May watched the crowd on the pier of the grotto shrink into the distance. A few seconds later, they passed a red buoy bobbing in the water. To May's surprise, two men, as skinny as John the Gibber and as ugly, were standing on it, hugging tight to the buoy and watching them. Seen anything interesting, Chippy? John asked. No, sir, Mr. Gibber, I say. Do you think they'll be coming to get us anytime soon? I wouldn't hold your breath, mateys. Could be a couple couple years or so. Just mind ye to sound the alarms if you see any intruders. Yes, sir. Once they were out of earshot, John rolled his eyes at May. They were caught trying to murder the mayor. The mayor. He takes that stuff seriously. So now they're on watch out here. There's nobody willing to do it. Personally, I think it's a bit harsh, as the mayor's certainly murdered his share of folks. He held up his hand. He held up his hand to the side of his mouth. Poor fellas. Must be boring as anything. And then they were alone on the sea, just listening to the lapping of the oars against the water and the waves against the cliffs. John rowed for several hours until the cliffs seemed to shrink from massive to just huge, then huge to large. Then finally they'd settled into rocky rolling hills along the shore. After hours of snoring, Pumpkin sat up, rubbed the tuft of the top of his head, and spoke. I wonder what those gulls are doing now. What gulls are they? What gulls are they? Let me say that right. I need to say it right, or else I won't like it. What gulls are they? John asked, perking up. We saw them back at the beach, May explained. That's what forced us into the catacombs. Gulls outside the catacombs? John looked deeply troubled. May stammered. I didn't think to tell you earlier, John looked triggered. She swallowed. Do you think they might be looking for the grotto? John nodded once, decidedly. Ah, I'm almost sure of it. Why else would gulls be in these parts? There's nothing here but sand and sea in the caves. And I said, Cleeville wants us all wiped out. The trouble my dear friends are in. We should go back and warn them. Warn them. John's face was grim and still as a rock. Then he took a deep breath and sank back into the oars. Wait, don't you think we should turn back? May asked. It's too late, most likely. Gulls move fast when they want to, but the knaves know how to take care of themselves. Nobody who can get in who we don't want in. But we got in. John winked at May. You don't think we let you, dearie? You and that house ghost of yours? How do you know Pumpkin is a house ghost? Just by looking? John nodded. May looked at Pumpkin, who looked suddenly humble and unsure, and back at John. How? Look at him. House servants are dimmer than the rest. And anyhow, ghosts just ain't as important as specters. May looked at Pumpkin, who was looking down at his feet, his shoulders hunched. He's important. John laughed. Right, lass. I don't think you're so important, Cockroach Lips. Pumpkin muttered to his feet. Why, you... John thrust his oars to either side of him, moving forward. What about those goals? May interrupted, sliding between the two. Shouldn't we at least warn? John sat back as he interrupted her in return. Each knave has to look out for himself. It was the end of the topic, clearly. After several minutes, Pumpkin lay down and began to snore again. May lay back beside him protectively and watched the sky, occasionally sneaking a look at John the Gibber. They needed him, and he seemed to want the same thing they did. Still, May wondered if it would be wiser to take their chances on their own. When they finally docked, she was in such a daze She hadn't even noticed they turned toward shore, and then she heard and felt the crunching of sand beneath the boat. They were sheltered. Sorry, I got distracted. Um, where was I? They were sheltered by an overhanging rock, and it was cool. And it was cool. John stretched, his bony ribs poking out against his ragged shirt. We should build a fire. After May ate, and the three sat around the fire, John made the fire. After May ate, the three sat around the fire John had made from stardust, kept in a pouch at his coat in his coats. They sat with crossed legs, staring at the flames. You know, John said, it's a quick walk to the top of the hill, and from there you can just see Ether. Do you want to go? You mean we're that close to the city? Aye, I'd love to. May jumped up and brushed herself off and followed John, who led her out from the overhanging and up a narrow rocky path. She thought to herself how amazing it was that she was here, walking at dusk with an old pirate. Her, May. If only Somber could have seen her. Maybe he would see her soon. The thought lifted her. Maybe the luff, the thought lifted her spirits. John reached out his hand to help her up a few. Uh, John helped. John reached out his hand to help her up the last few steps. May stepped up beside him and followed his gaze. There she is, most beautiful city in this world, or the other one. Though I, though I admit it, though I admit I haven't seen the other one in quite a while. They were at the end of a long, dry plain, and there it was, and there across it, glowing and spiking above the horizon, was the city of Ether. Gosh, it's so far than I hoped, May lamented. It's not as far as you'd think, John sighed. Sometimes I wish I could give up the life, he sighed again. I'd love to live like normal spirits do, with their nice graves outside the city and their earth houses to haunt, and going to this pit of despair for the holidays. But alas, I am what I am. He turned to May. You're lucky. If I were still living like ye, the things I'd do. I'd change, I swear, be the person I want to be. I'd give up the knave's life, get married, if I hadn't died. Um, how did you die? May ventured shyly. She'd been dying to ask. John studied her, the usual twinkle in his eye gone. If you want, we can sit a while and I'll tell ye. They both sat on the rock overlooking the city. Back in England, I was running with a band of thieves, doing the usual stealing, holding up ships, things like that. I was out working. She's been. Nice. Yeah, she'd been dying to ask. Nice one. Good job. Are you proud of yourself? 100%. Very nice. Okay. stealing, holding up ships, things like that. I was out working on my own one afternoon, slipping into rectory, the local rectory to steal the communion cup. When the law nabbed me, the royal guard heard our gang was around, you see, and they were looking. Well, they hadn't been able to find the others because we had a nice tucked away spot that we used to hide in. It drove the guards crazy, and they told me if I told them where me mates were, they'd let me go. John shrugged. I told them all I knew, and they let me go on condition I wouldn't say a word to me mates. When me mates asked me what had happened, saying they had heard I was caught, I told them they'd heard wrong. That evening, knowing the royal guard would be coming at nightfall, I left them and went to the pub, had a nice mutton dinner, and didn't think more about it except that I'd have to find me a new gang. Only, I get the news that my mates were too wily for the law. How I got the news was that my mates showed up to the how I got the news was that my mates showed up at the pub, grabbed me and threw me in a sack. They took me to a cave and put me in a barrel and hung me from the ceiling. I was in there for 7 days before I finally died. May sat stunned. Terrible, ain't it? Yeah, yes, May breathed. Can you believe me own mates treated me that way? But you betrayed them. That's true, but two wrongs don't make a right, John insisted, crossing his emaciated arms. No, I guess not. John's cracked, dry lips turned downward. You're taking their side. You're taking their side. No, I'm not. It's just, don't you feel bad for betraying them? Sure I do, lassie, but I'm a changed man now. All I can do now is be the best knave I can be. May stared. But spirits don't change. John cleared his throat. I guess that's what they say. He shrunk from May defensively. Ain't you ever done a betrayal to one of your friends? May thought, then picked at her fingernails, not meeting his eyes. I don't really have any friends. Well, that's a shame. I have a cat. A cat's not a person. Yeah, but he's my friend. May thought of the night at the lake and crumbled a little inside. She thought of how she had never realized how much of a friend Somber Kitty had been. He had been her best friend and her best and only friend. And I guess I did betray him. See? John smiled with satisfaction. But still, I can't say a cat. But still, I say a cat ain't really a friend. I hate cats myself. Except in stew. I liked a good cat stew when I was living. I used to make up a mean batch for me mates. May winced, feeling depressed. Even a man with cockroaches crawling out of his mouth had more friends than she did. Pumpkin, sort of my friend, she offered hopefully. John laughed. Huh! Huh! A cat and a house ghost? That's rich. You won't find any house ghost that's worth much in any way of smarts or courage. When the chips are done, he'll run the other way. Mark me words. And as for cats, well, you won't find one in the whole ever after. In the whole of the ever after. May pondered what John just May pondered what John had said about Pumpkin. It did seem like the truth. Why do you think the animals were banished, Mr. Trigger? Okay. Um, why do you think the animals were banished, Mr. Dribber? John shrugged. Who can explain anything evil Bo Clevel does? A bunch of ghouls that worked for him rounded up the cats first. The ghouls ain't very bright, but and I think they had a hard time telling cats apart from the other animals. I don't know that I don't know that he didn't just decide to get rid of all animals together to make it simpler. It was right around the time we started hearing reports of the bogey. Lord knows why he didn't send the bogey's dogs to do the job. I reckon they could tear a cat apart in less than a second flat. Curious that. May sidled a little closer to John, thinking about the bogey's dogs. He hugged her arms around her. She hugged her arms around herself. Look over there, John said, pointing across the sand in the other direction. There was the tiniest hint of movement. That's the Interrealm Soarway. It goes all the way from the southwest portal up around the city, where it intersects a few of the train tracks that run all the way to the north, to the far north. Quite a marvel, isn't it? Quite a marvel it is. It stops outside Ether, and that's it. It doesn't stop till the tip top of the realm, though nobody rides it anymore, if they can help it. I believe it goes all the way to North Farm, where your blanket is from. May's throat tightened. That's one place you wouldn't find me going, even for treasure. There's nothing but strange spirits up that way, powerful types, like what made your blanket. How'd you say you got that anyway? May's heart sped up. We just found it. She wished. She wished she wished he hadn't said anything about the train. Knowing it even existed filled her with shame. Mm, John nodded, seeming suspicious. Anyway, no need to worry about the North. Ether is our concern, ye see. He pointed. The city is surrounded by a big wall, with a gate at each corner. Each gate is guarded by a sniffing phantom. He leaned toward her and looked her in the eye for emphasis, as he said this, sending a waft of horrible stench over her face. You know what that is? May shook her head. She heard it before, even from John, even from John, and it didn't sound very scary. The thieves used to dress up and get into the city. Once Bo Clevel's spirit started taking over, but Clevel caught on to that. So he brought up the sniffing phantoms from the stench swamps down to South Place. Highly developed noses. Now you have to get checked for scents before you can get through the gates. What kind of scents? Oh, the scent of thievery, for one. John sniffed his armpit. John sniffed his armpit and then poked her inside. And the stench of life. But we'll fix that. May's mind darted to Lucius. She didn't want to think about it. And if we're caught, they'll throw ye in a gadget called the incinerator. You come out a bug or a worm or else a rock, and that gets sent in the mail to your nearest relative. My cousin Iago turned into a twig that I kept in my pocket for a while until it got washed out in the laundry. May's face must have shown the worry she felt, because he winked and added, "Don't worry. You stick with me and I'll get you through." May wondered what she and Pumpkin would do without him. They'd be lost. Suddenly, she felt guilty for doubting him. "Mr. Jibber?" "Yes, dearie?" He leaned an ear close to her. "Speak up. Thank you for taking us." John grinned, his deep set eyes getting a little moist. "Why, it's good for me to be challenged. Eternity gets real stale, I'll tell ye. Sometimes I don't think it'd be half bad to disappear into nothingness after all." His limbs shook for a moment, then settled. "What is it?" May asked, touching his arm. She was getting less and less she was getting less and less sensitive to the cold zaps of the spirits. John forced a small, nervous smile. John forced a small, nervous laugh. "Just a goose walking across my grave." With that, he turned and drifted down the hill. Across the far realm, Somber Kitty paced a large, stone-walled room, occasionally gazing toward the open window like a caged tiger. On the first day of his captivity, his net had been substituted with a triangular room at the top of the tallest pyramid in the Egyptian settlement. It had a sumptuous carpet, a gorgeous linen scratching post, and gilded catnip balls. There was also a breathtaking view of a city far in the distance, but looking at the vista made Somber Kitty meow darkly. He placed his paws on the sill of the window, sticking his head out into the dry desert air and looking toward the ground longingly. As he did so, a large group of people who were milling about at the base of the pyramid fell on their knees and bowed their heads to the sand. They did this every time Summer Kitty showed his face. At first, it made him curious, but now he barely noticed it. He had no way of knowing that the Egyptian spirits had adopted him as a god, and if he had, it wouldn't have made him any less melancholy. With his paws still on the sill, he looked around the room once again for a way to escape, and then turned to the window with a mew. He peered at the people below thoughtfully, as if they might be able to answer the one question that mattered. Meow. And that is the end of that chapter. Let me see how many chapters I've read. 20 to 22. 20 to 22. Okay. I'm going to stop recording. Thank you for listening.